Welcome, guys. Another video on the Florida Panthers. On this one, we're going to recap the winning streak a little bit, last couple games from the past week, as well as Sam Reinhart's contract extension. There's already rumors and some insiders have been kind of talking about it, giving voice to it, which means that there's definitely conversations ongoing. Reinhart himself said in an interview that excuse me, that the conversations have been positive and everything's looking good. So anyway, we'll get into that first, and then we'll talk about the Panthers winning streak and what that means for the franchise. And just, I don't know, I think we're just in love with this team. So yeah, let's start with Reinhart. Daryl, the expectation is that he's gonna stay with the Panthers. There's obviously tax breaks and things that you have to take into consideration. And it is said to be less than Tkachuk's contract, which is all that I think most Panther fans kind of wanted. We don't want to overpay greatly either. But even if you look at Reinhardt's career shooting percentage and just his consistency, is one of those guys that you know where you're going to get from him year in, year out. This year has been different. I think he's playing in the top line, and I think Barkov is having his best season yet, and that contributes a lot to it. Also, Rodriguez has made a huge difference with his speed and everything. But anyway, let's start with the extension for Reinhart and what you think of it. I know that you've been a hater, and you've always said that we shouldn't resign Reinhart, but I have a feeling that you're gonna have to swallow your pride on this one.
Not really. I mean, I think he's not gonna get traded at this point. I think, given all the rumors, I think at this, it sound. I mean, Reinhart in an interview with Frank Sorvalli said the contracts talks were positive and he wanted to play in Florida. The reporting is he's not, as you said, not going to get paid more than Tkachuk. So he might be in the 8-point-something range, which, for the kind of career he's had the last 3 years and numbers he's put out. He's been a consistent player. You've always said that as a minimum a 20, 25 goal scorer. And that's when he was like in a bad team in Buffalo, struggling. For the Panthers, he's had a career year every year. And last year, thinking back, like he actually, remember, he had a lot of chances in front of the net. He hit a lot of posts. We were so frustrated with him. He's like, he's not a good shooter.
Actually, I want to say something about that.
Yeah.
Last night, he was vintage Reinhart. He missed like 3
He missed the net 10 times. Yeah.
Like really. He didn't have a good game. He made some.
No, he had a breakaway, sent it wide. Yeah.
Awful last night.
He had a backhand that went super wide, but
he still gets like 2 points. Unbelievable.
Yeah, I know. It's like Tkachuk. Tkachuk is the same way. Tkachuk misses a ton, but then when it matters, he scores, and that's what you need. You need the clutch guys. Reinhart, what I think I've seen and I've noticed more is that he's more cold-blooded. He's playing hard. He's playing hard on the boards. He's engaged. He doesn't lose the puck a lot. And I think playing on the third line last year kind of hit him a bit. Like he was hidden in a line that wasn't as good, with a kid in Lundell and Lusty or whoever else was in the line. And I think that it made it harder for him to like stand out. I think now that he's figured it out with Barkov, and you can rotate whatever the other winger is. Rodriguez is working out, but it could be Verhey, it could be a free agent, it could be Mackey, it could be anybody going forward. That's the other thing that makes it feel like a fit. Is that he can work there, and you also know that if you need to move him to a third line, one, the guy's willing to do it and not gonna like stop trying, and that he's a power play mainstay because he is good on the power play. He was last year. He led the team in power play goals last year, I believe. So, or at least was up there with Tkachuk. So I think, I'm less sort of against him getting the extension again if we're committed to him being a first liner. I've always said it. As a first liner, you pay the guy. But if he's going to be your third liner, you cannot give him more than 6, 7, right? So I guess if he's going to be in the 8 range, 8-point-some range, with the cap going up and all that, I'm okay. Because I think his game can age well. He doesn't rely on speed and physicality, which, as you get older, that gets in the way. He's a very smart player. He's a positional player. And he can play with most people, and he's mature. I think this year he just looks a lot more mature. He's 28 now, finally, like in the middle of his prime, kind of a veteran now. I think that run did him good. That playoff run last year, he was one of the few guys that came out of that run. Like he and Barkov came out like way better players. So I'm okay with signing him if we're committing to that core. And he's not going to be this every year probably, but I think he's shown that he's been consistent enough. Two ways. His plus minus is the other reason why I'm kind of more sold, is that his plus minus has never been good, but the plus minus this year is great. And I think he shows like he's being trusted to play on the penalty kills, when you need him. And he can play it in many situations, and he can even take faceoffs and not necessarily lose them. So yeah, man, I guess, I'm not swallowing my pride. It's not, he's a good leader. He's a smart guy. He's a good player. If we're going to commit to him, then that means we're not going to go after big free agents probably in terms of forwards next season, because the cap won't allow it, but that's okay. It's the scoring is there. You might just trust the kids. Mackie and Sordev can come up and give you some goals because they got the skill to do that. And Lundell eventually will have to be, people are going to get a cheap extension and give him more time to figure himself out. Maurice talked about him yesterday, so we can talk about that later, and we'll talk about the team. But yeah, I'm more okay with that signing. And it sounds like Montour and Forsling might be also on the way to getting extended, and it makes sense. The team, it's looking like Maurice said this team looks different from last year. Like even toward the end of the year, like he feels like this team now, this is who they are. And so if that's the case, you got to keep that core for the next 4 to 5 years. You got to keep it for the run. And Montour's not having a great year since coming back, which maybe it keeps the number down. Lundell's extension probably cheaper than I expected now, because if he goes to arbitration, he's not going to get a lot of money. His numbers are not great. So Cito, in a way, the team's doing well, and a couple of guys like still not having broken out might actually buy him time with the extensions of not having to overpay. And hopefully Forsling is not looking for like top money. He's an excellent defenseman, so he can ask for he could get some good, decent money in the open market, but he's not a household name. So there'll be other guys on top of him in the free agency or trade market. So anyway, yeah, man, Reinhart, good for him. Great year. Won the game last night. Like, I guess Cito has no choice if they're sold on this guy being legit, and maybe he's better than I expected. Happy to be surprised. We'll see how he plays next year after he gets paid.
Bro, you're such a hater.
I'm skeptical. That's not a hater.
I'm not skeptical,
but I have to say, I will say this. Given what he brings you for the money that these guys are going to command, I'd rather keep him than Verhaeghe. Verhaeghe is going to command money because he's going to hit 40 goals again, and he should get paid. He's late 20s, almost 30. He needs that money. He's never been that guy, and so catch in, man. Good for you. I don't think we should give him 8 or 9. I think Verhaeghe could probably get Timo Meier money in free agency. So anyway, I'll say that Reinhart is probably the guy I will keep.
Yeah, I think you go year by year, but it makes sense to just re-sign Reinhart. I think the consistency has been there in terms of offense, and yes, he is a power play guy. I think he has like 15 goals on the power play, of 14 since the last game they played before the Kings last night. I think he had 14 goals on the power play. That's almost half. But that's what's kind of encouraging about it, right? A lot of these guys, Kucherov, Stamkos, a lot of guys get their points on the power play. So I don't care about that. I think you have to pay him because he does all those things. He does the power play, the PK.
He leads the league in power play goals.
Yeah.
15.
Yeah, and like he'll lead the league in like empty netters or something. It's what he does, but it's not the production, because then if we just look at the production, then we just turn into the Leafs, right? Anybody that score goals, like you mentioned, Verhaeghe, then you have to pay him. You pay everybody. You can't do that. So I think you look at the other parts of his game. He's really good on the boards. He can be physical. He's good on defense. He's not prone to make mistakes. He's not gonna like lose you a game. And when you couple that with being a first line winger when he was originally a center, I think, and all those things, and just the trajectory, the way that he just improved so much, because neither one of us were really a believer in him being able to play on the top line this season. And I do think that whatever the contract negotiation was, he must have gave them a number. And Zito said, okay, I'm going to put you on the top line so you can earn that number. I don't think I think Zito was going to pay him no matter what, but it was more about kind of prove it this year that you can do it in the big stage and with the top guys, and we'll go from there. Yeah, I expect something like 8.75, something like that. Maybe it goes up to 9, but I think a lot of these guys take all these bonuses. Something that we kind of didn't talk about the Nylander extension is, the tax bracket and all that. A lot of these guys, when they take a certain amount of money up front, it's because, from what I've read and heard, they put that money in a fund, and they actually get tax breaks on, or they'll invest it right away. And it's not like black and white as far as the tax thing. The only thing that affects that is, if you're in the Toronto market, half of your games are at home and you get taxed Canadian tax. When you play in the US, you get taxed appropriately based on a game by game basis. So it's, everybody says that, take home money or whatever, but there's ways to kind of get around that. Anyway, that's a different topic. Yeah, man, I'm happy for him, and I like him. He's not like my favorite player on the team or anything like that, but I think that he's good enough, and he gives you exactly what you need with this score, where you can just sign him for those 8 years or whatever, and then the trick is going to be, the no trade clause or the no movable clause that you put in there. That's the most important thing, because you definitely want to have an out by the time he's 33, 34 maybe, before his last 2 years, just like they do with Barkov and Tkachuk. So, yeah, good for him, man. I think the team is looking good. The core is great. We'll transition into the 9-game winning streak from here. Reinhart has been a big part of it, but I think the key there has been Tkachuk. He just got going. He's playing different. Like, there's a lot more jump in his game. He's faster, more decisive. You can definitely see a big difference. I don't know if it just means that he's fully healthy now, or he's just confident, or maybe he realized he needed to step up. But even with a down year this year, he's still gonna probably get as many points as like Barkov, which is crazy. But yeah, man. Last night's game against the LA Kings was incredible. The whole game I was watching, we're gonna lose this. We're gonna lose this. We're gonna lose this. We weren't playing bad, but the Kings were just really good. They gave us a few chances here and there, 2-3 chances every period, but we couldn't capitalize. I think Lumber missed a sitter that he lifted over the goal.
Yeah, we hit the post. We hit the post twice.
Yeah, Bennett hit the post. Bennett had like 3 chances. We could have had like 4 goals going into the third, but that's kind of what I
I'm curious with the expected goals, but what I like about us is that when we do get chances, we get them close to the net, and I like that, because that's in the playoffs. That's where you need to battle. You can get a fluky goal or a guy snipes it, but in the playoffs, there's a lot. You don't have as much space to snipe. People block a lot. Even we blocked a lot of shots last year with freaking Mark Stahl and Ekblad. So yeah, all to say that you need that sort of habit of like going to the front of the net. And the fact that Bennett was getting chances right there, Lomberg's getting chances, Stanley's been getting chances in front of the net. Even Lundell missed one that I thought should have gone in. He sent it over the net, but he had it was just 1-on-1.
Lundell had three decent looks. He looked a little bit better. I do think that we can talk about Lundell later, but I do think that you've mentioned they're working with him. The coaches, Maurice talked about him a little bit, and I do think they're trying to get him to shoot more, maybe just be more offensive minded. But yeah,
I think he's in his own head and all that. I think that the issue with Lundy is, I think he's in a tough position. I think Maurice said playing with Reinhart helps, right? Like Reinhart elevated him in a way. Maybe we underestimated that. Maybe we thought Lundell was driving the line, and maybe Reinhart was driving the play. I think Lundell had a great line with Reinhart and Marchment that first year. Marchment's had a bad year last season, but this year, Marchment is one of the best plus players in the league and has like 32 points in 40 games. he's playing like he's finally playing the money that they gave him. So Marshman is like a legit winger and had a career year and was trying to get that money. And Reinhart was the first career year he had. So that line was just humming. But last season was a good line with Lusty and Reinhart. They could defend really well. And even this season, yesterday, Maurice said how the adjustment he made actually was that he started playing Lundy's line and Stenlund's line against the Kings' top lines, because he felt like the bottom lines could withstand and defend, which we did, and actually ended up getting a lot of chances. But then that meant that our top two lines got a lot of chances. And that's why we looked better as the game went on and have more chances. So it was a smart adjustment. But that means that at the very least, Maurice can trust the bottom six to defend against top players, especially when you're playing. I think he was more willing to do it against the Kings. So the Kings are not necessarily a fast team. I think if you're playing a super skilled team, maybe that's the fourth line I wouldn't trust as much. But the Lundy line is so in Lustrainen, I'll always trusted to defend. So I will say that I'll give credit that Lundy is still, I think, a solid two-way player, and he has been looking better, and he looks bigger, getting chances. He doesn't look the puck a ton to my eye, but he's just not scoring, not shooting well, and he's a better player than he's shown. Like he's a better shooter than he's shown. So yeah, man, just one of those things where like he's stuck. He needs better line mates. He hasn't had a consistent third line. He's still very young. We forget that. Maybe the contract year got in his head, and maybe he was looking for a better extension. And he's frustrated. The team is doing well, and he's not doing as much offensively. So yeah, I hope they take care of him. You don't want that guy to break, because then you're gonna have to trade him. And I think that if this is who he is, then you're not gonna get value. So I think you also don't want to trade him, and then he becomes like a top six guy. So he's an RFA. Keep him around for 2 to 3 more years. Give him a cheap extension, even if it's just like for 2 years. Give him a shot, and you can trust him in the playoffs on the third line. So anyway, that's my thing with Lundy. It's like I was hoping this would be his breakout year. It ain't gonna be that. But I'm not done with him. I trust him as a third liner to go against anybody on defense. So
yeah. No. I think it's actually smart to sign him now. Obviously, it's going to be a bridge deal because he's a center, and centers can get paid in this league if you're good enough to be in the top 6, even top 9. So it's actually kind of working in Zito's favor. Like you mentioned, you can re-sign guys like Lundell and Montour, maybe $1 million cheaper than you were originally per year. What I liked about the winning streak was just that the expectation was kind of there to lose some of these games, and after the last road trip, for them to respond this way was super encouraging. And we keep doing it. This team keeps doing this, where they'll have a few bad games or something's just not going right, and then they'll correct it. They'll either fix it. Look at the power play. The power play just, out of nowhere, it just looks different. The puck movement is just really fast. It's not just, Barkov to Kachuk to Reinhart. They're also getting one-timers. Last night, we were really aggressive when we were down 2-1 in the third. Expected shots yesterday where it was definitely a playoff game. We had 2.7. They had 1.2. So we definitely should have won in regulation. But, yeah, I'm just impressed with the team, man. My biggest issue last year was the offense. How is Maurice going to get the offense going? I thought that it was just a system. Like, this system doesn't work. For the offense, it's great. You're teaching them how to play defense and forecheck and back check, but how are we going to score? And then this year, we kind of transitioned. Me and you were kind of like, well, it looks like we just need like scoring wingers, and maybe we need to make a trade. And I think that it's all kind of corrected itself with the system and the players buying in, and everyone is just playing hard, man. Like, keep an eye on any of the 3 forwards at any time on the ice. There's no one standing. There's no one slacking off. There's no one just chilling. Bennett made like a really bad mistake in the offensive zone last night, and he was like the first guy back on the counter. The only thing I'm scared of, I guess, in terms of playoffs will be, getting to the finals and then going against like Vancouver, the Jets. I think those are going to be really tough because those are teams that are kind of similar to us. And even though Vancouver, you're still expecting that drop off at some point. I don't know if it's coming. They might win the President's Trophy. I don't know if the Jets can keep this going with that style, because that's the only downside to that style, is that if you have a few nights where you're a little off in the defense or goaltending, you're going to lose, which is what happened to the Panthers last year when they lost so many games that they should have won. But yeah, I think that if you tie it in all together, I think you have to resign Reinhart, you extend Lundell as cheap as possible, you resign Montour, give him 4 or 5 years at a decent amount, and you have to lock in Forsling. You have to. And then you can always negotiate with Ekblad when the time comes. See how you handle Bob. I think you do have to get rid of that contract, so that's going to be interesting. But I think with the way the team is playing, having an above average goalie is more than enough. And I think Knight, if he's ready next season, he'll be fine with that defense and the way the guys are playing.
Yeah, and Maurice will be smart with the contracts. I think Montour is going to want more years because this is his last contract, big contract, and I think in the open market he probably could get a 7-year deal, even if he's taking a lower AAV to secure the money and longevity. Because he's a right shot defenseman. He can skate. Yesterday, he got a lot of shots through. He's starting to look stronger. He's just not putting up the points. But and he's a guy who can play that way into his 30s, probably. So I do think Cito will have to do 7 years. And I've heard reported that I think that it was like a 7-year times $7 million was the last number I kind of saw thrown around for him. But what Cito could do then is say, well, I'll give you the 7 years for a decent AAV, but then I give you a no-move clause for the first 4 years only. And then after that, if I have to trade you, I'll trade you. And then that's why these no-move clauses and all these, you have these layers, right? Bonuses, that's what gives you leverage. It's like, I'll give you more time, but less, the no-move clause that I get to make the call on that, or I'll pay you up front with a bonus a little bit more, but then give you 1 less year and you can invest that money, blah, blah, blah. So anyway, it's a business transaction. And so I'm hoping, I would be excited to see all 3 of them extended before the deadline in a way, because then there's less uncertainty. I think trading one of them right now would destabilize the team, and even if you get a good return. And you do have to think about the future. But right now, man, with this core, even if guys going into some of them eventually into the 30s, we do have a 5-year window with Barkov and Tkachuk, because Barkov is going to be 32, 33. He can still play at this level at that age, given his style. I mean, look at Kopitar or whatever. So I think he can give you that, so you commit to that for now. And if you have no move clauses coming off the books by then, you can just start to move the team. That's when you start to make your trades. Or if the team just takes a nosedive, or what, the score doesn't work out in the next 2 years or whatever. And the other thing I like is that you have Mackey and Sordov and Benning and these kind of kids already ready kind of to break into the team, at least as role players, high-end role players, because of their skill. And you can still keep the Lumbers and Stenlins and a few of these tough guys, Gajovic, and you have Mikola looked up for a couple of years. So I think the construction's there. You can extend the guys and then trust the Mackey and Sordov, and these guys are going to give you some scoring, some high-level play, having play in the AHL. They're going to be NHL ready, hopefully. And then the other thing about that is that you have Devine and Davis and Sauching and all these like young talent coming right after. And right now that talent's looking really good, looking like first rounders. So if you get that pipeline going with your ELCs and your young guys, and you can kind of Carolina has been doing that, you can kind of keep this team and take a risk and keep in the core. And if it doesn't work, you can then trade, knowing that these young kids will get paid, and you can develop some of them and either trade the kids or keep some of them and sign them, and then they become your stars or your top 6 players or top pairing defensemen. So that's why I would be excited to see everybody extended this year. I think in the offseason, Verhaeghe might have to go. I think the numbers won't work out. Ekblad is a question mark. Bob, I think, will have to probably go. I just don't see the money working. So, there's always a compromise, but there's a reason why Mackey, Sordov, and Benning are getting top minutes in the AHL right now. Cedar knows those guys have to come in. That money, that's the last year of the ELC. He needs the cheap contracts to plug the holes. And I'm honestly okay with that. You can get assets by, you can trade Verhage at the deadline for a first round pick, and maybe a player, and Ekblad maybe as well. Though I'm not so sure that we should trade Ekblad unless he wants a raise. If he's willing to take a reasonable contract, I might be okay with extending Ekblad a little bit longer. So
yeah, a defensive core is extremely important because you can build around that with some. You really just need two top lines to kind of give you most of your production. Obviously, if you have a third line that works, then you have depth, and our fourth line is good, even though on stats, they're not great. They're always our bottom players, which is fine. You expect that. But our fourth line is actually very gritty, and our fourth line alone plus Lawrence is probably, more physical than a lot of like bottom six guys out there in the league. So I'll take that any day, and you can save some money there with those contracts in the third line, Lusty, Lundell, if you resign them, and then you just got to find that third guy to fit in there. Yeah, I was looking real quick. You mentioned the Hurricanes. The Hurricanes, like their top player is the top paid player is Aho at 9.7 starting next year. He's not even there yet. And then it's like Dmitry Orlov, and that's it. Everybody else is on like team friendly deals.
I mean, some of that's going to change, Jarvis and Natchez.
Yeah, but you have like Jordan Staal is 2.9 until like 2027. Obviously, he's older.
Yeah.
Kokaniemi is at 4.8 through like 2030, which is insane. Teravainen is the one that you're gonna have to look into, and then
I think he's going to be a free agent. Yeah, he might.
Yeah,
he's older too, in the 30s.
Yeah, that's the only. He's 29. But Aho, you have it at 9.7, for like 8 years or whatever it was. And that right there, like that's a team that's always competing, always has a chance to go to the finals, and they don't need to overpay anybody. I mean, they hit the lotto with Kochetkov, the goalie. He's on a $2 million deal like per year until 2027. So yeah, like that's good team construction.
Yeah, you need the team. You have to. Yeah, there's always going to be holes. Like every team's going to have a weakness, right? Like we don't have a lot of scoring in our bottom six. Like that is an issue. But what you try to do is, do I have enough assets to keep my core deep, right? And balance defense and offense, goalie, good enough, and then at the deadline, you can then address the weakness for that year if you feel like you can go on a run, right? And if you're not doing well that year, you become a seller, get assets, restock, and then figure out what you're going to do, how you rebuild in the next year, free agency, or whatever. But it's just that push and pull of like last year, Cito realized, don't make a move. It's not the right year to make a move, And so this year we'll see what happens, but it may just be that he's thinking of a third liner, or, one thing I wanted to mention is like yesterday, Marie said that he would love to see, I don't know, the way he said it, he said that he would still love to see Rodriguez in the third line with Lusty and Lundell, because Rodriguez, they asked him about Rodriguez, how well he's doing in the first line, and Verhage kind of played there for a while, but he said that the second line with Verhage is really, really humming, so he doesn't want to touch that. So Rodriguez has been pretty good in the top line, but I think he knows that Rodriguez is obviously not a top line player. And come playoff time, can you trust him? He's just saying he's playing a lot harder now. But the way he said that he would love to see Rodriguez in the third line, I wonder if that was always the plan. And that's why Rodriguez is signed for 3 years. And, I'm curious as to what Cito's going to do, because I was looking at the cap, man. We have about $1 million in cap space, 1.2, because of all the accumulation of whatever the cap that comes off your thing as the year goes on. Cousins is probably a goner, and that's $1 million, 1.1 off the books. And we have an extra defenseman, whether it's Mahura or Kulikov. One of these guys are probably going to go, because we still have Balinskis down in the HL. So that is about 3-point-some mil of cap space. You could trade for a guy and have for a $5 million player, Tarasenko, and have the team retain half, and we can pay Tarasenko 2.5 or $3 million for the rest of the year, right? We don't have to keep him long term.
Well, I think
for the playoffs, right? And then you will have to give the Senators maybe a prospect or a pick. Maybe if they want a veteran, you send Mahura, who's your own defenseman. You send Cousins, and you're going to have to either give him a pick, a decent pick, and we don't have a ton of those, or maybe a decent prospect, not a top prospect. I mean, Tarasenko's probably walking, and the Senators probably don't want him back anyway. So anyway, that those are the consumers. Is there a Vancouver guy who's like, that they want to get rid of? Garland has been playing well, even though he wants out. Chicago has some guys to give away. Like, maybe we can just find somebody who can plug into that first line, and then you have Rodriguez in the third, and now you have a head of a top line. So anyway, that's how team construction matters, because you can always tweak it mid-season.
Yeah, and I think our deadline cap space is at 5.9 right now, which you're supposed to add that, and that changes as the season goes on, but you're supposed to add that to whatever current cap space you have. So we'll have like 7 million supposedly. I don't know how that works, and I think that's just like a rental for the end of the year, because after that the cap just goes back to normal, even with the increase next year. But that definitely gives you some wiggle room where you can, like you said, bring in. You don't even need anybody to retain salary if you don't want. Like, you can find a $6 million winger out there and bring him in, and there's plenty of those that are gonna want to go to a team that has a chance to win the cup. So even if you just want to go the rental route till the end of the season, and then maybe just bring up Mackey next year and go from there, you actually have, you have the option to find not just a Tarasenko, but anybody else that's kind of out there if you want to add more offense. The problem is that as the team is constructed right now and the way they're playing, you don't really need to add anything that's going to like do anything wild. Just like you mentioned, what you would do is add top line winger, so you can move Rodriguez down to the third line. You can still play with Verhaeghe coming up to the first line if you want, and put the new winger on the second line if that's what he prefers, because I don't think that's going to change a ton, just because of the chemistry that Verhaeghe has with Barkov already, and all those guys have played with each other for a long time. So yeah.
You might just go after a third liner. I mean, it's much cheaper. You can move Cousins, move some cap, and trade for a third liner who makes $2 to $3 million a year. And I've mentioned a few guys before. So anyway, Tito does have options. If everybody gets extended this year that's supposed to get extended, he's probably going to make one move at the deadline. He's not going to overpay. He may not get Tarasenko, because maybe another team wants a first round pick for him or whatever. But you can always go after a Yamamoto or somebody like a role player that can give you some scoring in the third line better than Cousins. He could also just think, you know what, Cousins, man, like in the playoffs, he's going to play balls out. He's going to hit people, and maybe he's not the worst guy to keep, and then you let him walk. So we don't, like you said, we don't have to make a trade. That's the good news. Like we have it good enough to compete. I do think that another guy who can give us a little bit of more goals than Cousins on the third line, at the very least, does make a difference. So anyway, that's where I'm at with the team. But feeling good, man. They're playing the system they've bought in. Yesterday was perfect. They never veered from their style. They stuck with it. And Marie said it. Even if we had lost, I would have been proud of them. Like that, I told you, it's a playoff game. We showed yesterday that we can play this game and we can win. And psychologically, we stuck with it, and then we deserved it. We deserved that tying goal. We deserved the winning goal, because we should have done it earlier. And it was not an easy game. And we hit them, outshot them. And anyway, so it was good, man.
Yeah. No, the winning streak has been great, and they've actually gotten better.
We're winning our way. We're scoring and winning our way, not by being flashy or getting lucky. It's like we are actually outplaying guys. And like in some of these games, we didn't start well, and then St. Louis, we were struggling early on again, and their speed and all that. And then all of a sudden, man, we just said, stick with it, and put them away.
Yeah, for sure. All right, guys, we'll wrap it up there. We'll catch you all next week with a couple more episodes. Don't forget to subscribe. Leave any comments, any questions. If you guys want to interact, we'll respond. If you want to make fun of us, that's fine too, whatever. All right, we'll catch you all next week. Peace.